Hello everyone, my name is Swagat Bora and my NCSU Unity ID is sbora@ncsu.edu. Today I'm going to give you a very short demo on how we can create remote instances using JavaScript file by running it using node.js, and then how we can use Ansible to deploy a web server into those remote instances and start it. So let's get to it. This is the main GitHub repo. It has the main.js file, the config.js, and an Ansible playbook. So we'll start by cloning this repo into our local directory. Git clone. Okay, so this will clone the our GitHub repo here, and you can see the files have come here. So in the meantime, let me show you the management console that this is the AWS management console. So I'll be provisioning the instances in two service provider. One is EC2. As you can see, there are no instances running as of now. These are all terminated. The second is the DigitalOcean provider that we will be using, and you can see that there are no droplets currently. So all the remote instances are called as droplets in DigitalOcean. So the first thing that we have to do is currently the config.json does not have any values to it. So we need to enter the values. I won't do that now. I will just copy my own config.json which I have already made. The next thing that we have to do is copy the SSH key files that I have already created. All my SSH key files in this specific directory by the name of private keys, and according to this private keys and all the security tokens, the values I have already entered in my config.json file. So now we can go ahead. As you can see, we also have a package.json file. What the package.json file will do is it will install all the packages that we will need. Basically, there are two main packages. One is the AWS SDK and other is the Needle. So before running our node.js file, we'll need to install these packages first. Sorry, it will be npm install. So npm install will get all the packages list from the package.json and will install them. You can see the packages are being installed now. Okay, all the packages are installed. Now we can go ahead and run our main.js file. As I already said, the main.js file, we are using node.js to run it. So the first argument that we'll give is provision. So the provision argument will call the functions to create instances both in AWS SDK as well as DigitalOcean. Okay, so now the create instance calls have been made, and if we do a refresh here, we'll be able to see it. So we are basically using the REST APIs that both these services provide in order to create the instances. We are using those REST APIs to create instances, and we are creating Ubuntu instance in both these providers. So you can see here that the instance is being created. Okay, my instance in droplets is created. So let's check again for EC2. Okay, so you can see here that the EC2 instance is also being created and is currently in status checks. So before logging into this instance, we have to make sure that the status check is complete. However, we do have a public IP in both this. So this completes the first step. The next thing is that we want to automatically create a inventory file. So the inventory file will be used by Ansible. We have already written an Ansible playbook. The Ansible playbook will install the web server into this remote machine. But to do that, Ansible first needs to know about the login information about the devices that we are trying to install the web server in. So those information will be provided in the inventory file. So similarly, now we will use the generate argument. So generate argument will first query the remote instances for the public IP, and using those public IP, it will create the inventory file. As you can see, it fetched the EC2 instance public IP, then it fetched the droplets public IP, and it created the inventory file. A quick look at the inventory file, you can see that there are two commands now. These commands are now used by this arguments are now used by the Ansible, and then it will take help from the Ansible playbook to perform the task. So now we are in the final step, and then which is to run Ansible itself. So the run Ansible argument, what it does is executes Ansible using this inventory file, and it calls the Ansible playbook that we already have. So let's check if our EC2 instance is done. So we can see that the status check is currently going on. So in the meantime, I can show you the Ansible playbook that I have in place. So we run Ansible. Okay, so this is mainly my Ansible playbook. So I have mentioned two hosts here. One is the AWS EC2, other is the DigitalOcean. And the task here is to install the Nginx web server. So we'll be using Nginx software to install software and install it in those remote instances. Then after this task is been completed, we have also given a handler. What the handler will do is it will start the Nginx server after the installation is successfully completed. So once that is done, so the status checks is taking time. So in the meantime, I'd like to tell you about the SSH keys that I'm using. So for DigitalOcean, I am generating my own SSH keys and then using SSH keygen, and then I have just uploaded the public SSH key file here, which in return it gives me an SSH ID which I'm using while I'm creating its instance. For EC2, in EC2 itself there is an option for generating the SSH keys, which I have used. So I have two sets of SSH keys now. One is for the EC2, other is for the droplets, and all those private SSH key file are placed in the private keys folder. So now the checks is complete. So once the check is complete, what we can do now is we can again run main.js and run this command. So this in order to run Ansible and install the web server into those. So this step takes time as well based on your internet connection. So it just asks me to confirm the authentication. Once the authentication is completed and Ansible is able to log into those remote machines, what Ansible will do is it will use the Ansible playbook to install the to perform all the tasks that we have written in the playbook itself. And then once those tasks are complete, it executes the handler function. So our handler function states that once the web server has been installed successfully, go ahead and start the web server. So the way we will test that it is working is that we already know the public IPs of the two machines. So if the web server is successfully running, we can go to our browser and give this web server and see if Nginx web server that is, and give this IP address and see if the Nginx web server that has been installed gives us some reply. So that is the main way of how we can check that the Ansible worked correctly and the web server is installed. So now we can see that all the task has been completed and probably the web server has been installed as well. So let's go ahead and try to see if the Nginx web server is correctly working. We'll just give this address. Okay, so we are getting a reply from the Nginx web server installed in EC2. Similarly, we'll do the same thing for the droplet. Yeah, and we are getting a reply from Nginx from the droplets as well. So this completes the demo, and we have successfully showed how we can automate the whole process of creating instances and then using Ansible to deploy any software we need.